So in this part, you are going to see an introduction to methods used in procedural animation. And we will start with the use of trajectories of particles. So first, a brief word on history. Procedural animation started at the early age of computer graphics, and in particular the use of particle systems, where each particle is actually following a specific trajectory and displayed using a simple geometrical representation. They were the first models able to represent complex-looking animated shapes, despite the limited capability of the hardware at that time. So here are two examples. The first one on the left is this explosion model for Star Trek II by William Reeves in 1983. And you can find the associated research articles for more information. The second on the right in 1988 by Carl Sims, who was a scientist and as well artist, who was one of the first to show such complex fluid-like animation. So the interest of particle systems is that they are lightweight in memory and computation, as each element is actually very simple. And here is a basic example of particle systems where the particles follow a free fall under gravity. In this case, the geometric representation of each particle is a sphere, and the equation of motion is given by the standard parabola p at time t is equals to 0.5 times g, the constant of gravity, times t squared, plus v0t, where v0 is the initial velocity, plus p0, where p0 is the initial position. So to mimic some complex motions, initial position and velocities can use random values, limited lifetime, and so on. So the first questions of this class is what are the parameters that we use for p0 and v0 in this example? Note that the coordinate system is set such that the xyz component is actually given by the respective red, green, and blue axes. So now you can stop the video and think about it, and we will discuss this question during the interactive session of the lecture. So now we have bouncing motion. This will be actually the objective of your first exercise of the lab class. So now we can wonder what is the equation of motion in these spheres that take into account the bouncing. And how can I write P of t given the initial condition P0 and V0? So to help you think about it, you can consider a single particle emitted at time t0, and then you can compute at which time ti the particle touches the ground. Then you can compute the new velocity after this impact, and by the way, how does it relate to V0? And once you have that, you should be able to express the complete equation of the trajectory using a piecewise definition, when t is before ti and t is after ti. As a side note, you can also notice the short shadow effect of the sphere around the time of impact. So as a bonus, you could wonder how do you think these shadows could be handled in the code? So this is another example, and in this case, the trajectory are defined using arbitrary motion, not necessarily related to physics. So here is another set of questions. What are the parameters that are used and the type of initial values that we need to attach to each particle? And it can be the initial position, for instance, the radius of the particle, which seems obviously to be a uniform random between a small interval of value, and that we may need also other parameters that you have to guess. And the second question is, finally, what is the equation of motion of this particle? So what is the P of t equals something? Note that implementing this example corresponds to the second exercise of the lab class. So far we only showed results where the particles are displayed as spheres, but we can use small images instead. In practice, it means that the particle is associated to a geometrical quadrangle, so it's two triangles, and then we map an image as a texture on the quadrangle of the particle. So the texture can have a transparent background, then the geometry of the quad is invisible, and this allows to fake a complex geometry representation while using only very simple triangles. Also, the quadrangle can always face the camera, then we call that a billboard, and this is the case for the smoke-like effect. When you rotate the camera, you will have the feeling of seeing a 3D smoke structure, but it's only the same image drawn on quads that always faces you. And you can see the single texture image of a cloud in the thumbnail. In this case, the blue background is actually the transparency. The texture itself can also be animated, and in this case we call them sprites. Finally, the texture can be modified depending on the point of view, and in this case we would call that imposters, as they would give the feeling of seeing a 3D geometry while being only 2D. So billboards, sprites, and imposters are actually very common in professional context, and in particular in video games. They can be used to model complex-looking vegetations and trees, while actually the branches are only textures mapped on quadrangles. Sprites are also used to give the look of fire, smoke, or even a flow of water, for instance. And this will be the exercise of your lab class. So in this case, which kind of model should we implement to have this final result with the smoke? And now here is an example of the sequence of the Lord of the Rings. And let's think about what elements in this sequence is real or virtual, and how we can do the virtual parts. So obviously the horse heads made of water are virtual effect. And the question is it made from a full 3D simulation of liquids, or do we use other kind of approaches? So this sequence is coming from the making of the movie to get an insight on how these productions are actually working. And we can see several layers coming one after the other. So first we see this waterfall effect. This is actually a simple 2D video. And we can see that the flow is not going toward us, but it's a simple zoom of the camera in the video sequence. Second, we see some heads of horses, and then we can wonder, why do we see these surfaces? Actually, these surfaces, they are used as starting points to emit some particles. And now we can see two layers of different types of particles. They are typically sprites with some texture of water droplets, and they fall and disappear a long time. And finally, when all the sequences are blended together, we get a nice animation of horse head made of water. Here there is no real fluid simulation, it's only an accumulation of several simple layers that are carefully tuned. And this process is actually happening a lot in the special effect industry. Real 3D simulation would have been very costly and hard to set up, and possibly also hard to tune to get these unrealistic effects such as these head horses. So tuning some effects using manual and procedural method is actually more effective in this case. And this is the full make-off. So at first we can see the real recorded scene. This is the real river, which is actually much more calm than the final shot. So then we can see some real recording of running horses that are the one escaping the water. And the other horses that are took in the water are fully virtually modeled and integrated into the scene. Next we see the different layers of the water, and as we can see, there is a lot of layers to get this final plausible appearance. And finally, we see an overview of the sequence, and everything needs to be redone using this point of view. And we always have to keep in mind that all of this work has to be done for a sequence that lasts about only 3 seconds on screen. In this part, we are going to see the use of procedural noise, and with a particular focus on the widely used Perlin noise. So first, what can we call procedural noise? That can be spatial and or temporal, and in graphics they are commonly used to model natural-looking phenomenon. So this procedural noise, it can be understood as a function that has some visible structure or pattern, and these patterns have limited frequency bandwidth. White noise, for instance, like random values, have unlimited frequency bandwidth, and so they don't exhibit pattern structure, so they cannot be used directly in graphics. However, the structure of a procedural noise should not be periodic, at least not visible. Otherwise, it would not look like a natural noise. And this function should be also deterministic, meaning that the function should always give the same output for the same input. Otherwise, you cannot reproduce and control your results. So here is a set of noise used to generate 2D textures, which is a common application, although the use of noise is larger than that. So now how can we create such procedural noise? Let us consider the objective of creating a continuous function f of a 1D variable x with limited frequency. A way to compute such function is to define it for integer x values as a pseudo-random deterministic function. For instance, we can consider the value of f given by a hash function that takes as input the integer n and output a pseudo-random number. Then to define a continuous function in the real domain, we smoothly interpolate the values between each integer. We can use for that smooth steps interpolation or cubic polynomials, for instance. So this function has the following property to be a noise. It's a continuous function, it's deterministic, it looks non-periodic, and it has a frequency limited around 1 Hz in this case. So this function can further be computed in 2D, 3D, or any arbitrary dimension. And the algorithm to compute such function is actually pretty simple, like this one in 1D. So for a given x, we compute the associated integer n value. Then we can evaluate our hash function at n and n plus 1, or we can consider further neighbors if you want. And then we can compute the value f at position x using interpolation. So okay, but this only gives a low frequency function. In most situations, for real objects, we would like to see more details. Then we can look at the fractal objects that typically models this type of high frequency. The idea is to recursively add self-similar details. So this process follows very simple rule and can lead to complex shapes. And some of the standard fractals look sometimes surprisingly close to natural details. However, standard fractals, such as Mandelbrot's, Sierpinski triangles, Newton's roots, and so on, are very hard to control. So we are not using these directly in computer graphics. So the initial idea of Perlin noise, that have been first proposed by Ken Perlin in 1985, is to sum over the pseudo-random function that we defined previously, with an increase of the frequencies and decrease magnitudes. So as an example, we can start with f of x, then we sum it to 0.8 times f of 2x, that itself is summed to 0.8 squared times f of 4x, and so on and so on. So at each step, the frequency of the function increases, but the magnitude of the details decrease. And at the end, we can see the appearance of this function after a few summations in 1D and in 2D as a texture. And this is the general expression of the Perlin noise, G. It's a sum over what we call some octaves, and we have n octaves in this case. For each octave, the magnitude decreases by the factor alpha, which is less than 1, and it's called the persistency, and an increase of frequency given by the factor omega. And this is some typical use case of this Perlin noise. So basically, we can directly use its value and display it as a height field surface. Then we directly get the representation that looks like a mountain. And using Perlin noise like that was, during a long time, the main approach to generate terrains in early video games, for instance. Of course, it can be used to generate textures, and we can modify actually the function in the summation. If we consider a sum of absolute values, for instance, we will have ridges appearing near the zero values. So this is used to model the specific patterns of sun-like texture. Also, marble effects, which is quite overly used in graphics, consist in modifying the function using a sine function to get some regular oscillation. But the Perlin noise brings the details. And this noise can also be used for animated texture, where we can translate the image, and in adding a dimension to the noise and evolving through this dimension along time, we can create some smooth style variations that looks like texture evolution. And basically, this Perlin noise is used for almost everything which is related to natural phenomenon. From textures to detailed natural shapes like rocks or for modeling explosions. So here we attach, for instance, the density to spheres that rotate and fall procedurally, and we add the details using noise on the density. And if you want to see some more examples, you can look at ShaderToy, which is a website with only real-time shader running on your graphics card. And you can type noise as keywords. For most of them, they will be variation of Perlin noise, and they are, most of them, able to do impressive results. So as a final note, some improvements over the procedure I just presented. So I showed a version of function f called value-based, as we computed the value of f using the hash function. Actually, we can get better results using something called gradient-based noise. And in this case, we set the value of the function to be 0 at every integer value and use the hash to set the derivatives. This gives pseudo-random gradients instead of position. And then we can interpolate similarly between these position and gradients. So this approach improves the frequency control of the function. We enforce a frequency of 1, while using value position can lead to more variations of low frequencies and can lead to changes of detailed appearance. The second improvement is the use of the so-called simplex noise. Instead of interpolating the values on a grid in 2D or 3D and so on, we decompose the space into simplex, which is triangles in 2D, tetrahedrons in 3D and so on. And then we interpolate in these simplexes. This avoids grid directional artifacts and is also faster to perform in high dimensions compared to grid interpolation. Finally, if you want to know more about procedural noises in general, you can have a look at the state-of-the-art from 2010 that categorized other types of noises. And now is an exercise on the parameter of Perlin noise. So I consider the reference terrain seen on the left. So this terrain has been computed as a height field, and the height has the following equation. So z equal h, which is some parameter, times the Perlin noise j, applied to two parameters, u and v, that are actually x and y. But these parameters, they are modified using the factor s and o. So for the reference shape, I use 9 octaves, an attenuation parameter alpha of 0.4. The h parameter was 0.3, the s parameter is 1, and the o parameter is 0. So now for each representation, A, B, C, D, E, and F, I change one parameter at a time. So the question is, which parameter did I change? And which type of value did I use to compare to the reference one? So this is a modeling exercise, but it makes you think about the type of variability you can play with using noises. So now the second exercise in animation. So I start with a simple function f of u and v equals uv0. So this is actually a flat surface. And the question is, how can I generate this animation using Perlin noise? In particular, which dimension of the Perlin noise I use and think that it can be in 1D, 2D, and 3D, and with which parameters U, V, and T, which is the time. And I let you think about it.